All right, well, first of all, I just want to say how excited I am to be here. I haven't been at an in-person event for over a year, so excuse me if there's a little rust, but I'm really excited to be here and to talk about governance. So the title of this talk is called One Council to Rule Them All, and what I'll be talking about is bringing back experimentation and incentives to decentralized governance. And before I get started, I just want to say, well, my name is Charles St. Louis. I'm the COO at Element Finance. Previously, I was the decentralized governance architect at MakerDAO and the Maker Foundation, where I worked on the self-sustaining DAO initiative, as well as created the MIPS framework and governance research and experiments and so on. And before I get into the details of the governance model, I just want to say a bit about Element Finance. Element Finance is an open source protocol for fixed and variable yields. And our team has been very focused on research, on bringing new primitives to DeFi, from traditional finance to new concepts and new products. But we're also very focused on governance. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is our new governance model, which is going to hopefully bring back a lot of that excitement in experimentation. So collectively, we've spent a lot of time over the past few years building governance, researching, observing, and planning out new systems and experiments. We have people from 0x, MakerDAO, and quite a few other projects who have extensive experience in governance. So to be blunt, we've seen what works, what doesn't, what we can improve on, what we can experiment with, and so on. And one major aspect of that is the vision of certain protocols after a project has decentralized fully needs to be very clear, or there needs to be a way to manage it and maintain it. Otherwise, you see silos happen, individual parties working on governance systems, they don't all work together. So you need to have some sort of vision alignment, or else the protocol can fall apart. Of course, the other issues that we see and are very common are things like low participation. People don't want to vote every week or every couple days on a certain proposal, and because of that, they suffer voter fatigue. And from voter fatigue, we get that voter apathy effect where people just stop caring, they don't vote at all, or they just click on one answer, and it results in malicious proposals getting through. The next area is certain things that are very common with one-to-one token voting. So that's things like capital loss, plutarchy, governance attacks. When a token is used, it can be accumulated by large parties, aka whales, and they can sway governance with the click of a mouse. The other area that I think is not talked about a lot is the capital loss and the opportunity cost when you're actually participating in governance. So when you're locked up in a governance contract, all you can do is really vote. You can't do anything with it. And because of that, I think a lot of people stop voting, or they just sell their tokens or do away with it because they're tired of it. And lastly, I think one important thing which I'm hoping to revitalize during this talk is experimentation and innovation in governance. A lot of projects have used iterative governance as an excuse to not innovate, such as the classic snapshot vote to multi-sig, because they have no exact timeline on when they actually have to go fully decentralized. Now that the safe harbor proposal that says you have 3 years to decentralize has passed, who knows how long you can actually string it out for. So I think that's kind of delayed a lot of governance innovation. So what we really want to do with this governance model was to bring back that excitement and experiments with governance, not just in DeFi, not just in finance, but also bring back incentives to governance. So a lot of protocols in the space really emphasize liquidity mining as a way to incentivize their users. But no products actually really incentivize governance behavior. And I'm not just talking about incentivizing votes, because a lot of people argue that incentivizing votes is paying people to vote for you, or paying for their attention. But in reality, you can incentivize way more in governance. You can incentivize people to make good proposals, and if they do a good job, they get rewarded. You can incentivize delegation. You can incentivize so much that just goes beyond voting. So what we really want to do is focus on the right incentivization, and if it works, we'll keep it. If it doesn't, we can turn it off. The other one is just testing these new experiments and pushing the ethos of Ethereum forward of the honor and the ability Ethereum has given us to just test new economic models, test new governance models, test software, and just continue on with that ethos and push it forward. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce Council. This is our governance protocol. It's a decentralized system that enables flexibility, improvements, experimentation, while successfully maintaining the robustness and security of the protocol that it governs, whether that's Element or another project that wants to use the system for themselves. There's 3 important features of Council that I want to talk about today. There's a lot more to this, but these are the big ones that everyone loves. And the first one is the Governance Steering Council, which will govern the protocol. The second is voting vaults, which essentially allows you to assign voting power to a specific position. I'll get into that a little more. And lastly is just flexible spending and optimistic grants to allocate funds to certain people and projects within the Treasury. So I think in general, grants are really seen as a pessimistic view on people. They assume people won't follow through on their grant and get the work done. But this model, inspired by Paul, who's sitting in the front row, assumes the best in people. He assumes that the grantees will achieve their work, and if they do, they get their funds over time, and it can be pulled back. So the Governance Steering Council was inspired by traditional corporate governance, which has been battle-tested for generations, and it works. And because of that, I think it is done because they're incentivized to be data-driven, they're community vetted to run the company, and there's a lot of great things about that, and it shouldn't be pushed away, it shouldn't be ignored. So the GSC really combines and emulates the good from traditional corporate governance, but also from decentralized governance. So there's permissionless joining, and what that means is anyone can join the GSC. As long as you're delegated a certain threshold of votes, you can actually be on it. So there's a defined threshold. If you meet it, you're on it. And what that comes with in certain decentralized projects, if you're voted in to do a certain task, there should be some authority that allows you to do your job because you're an expert for there and that you've been vetted. So the GSC will be allowed to propose votes directly on chain, spend the treasury budget up to a certain limit, and oversee the off-chain processes as well. So that includes the bug bounty programs, small spending allowances, and essentially advocating for the protocol and the vision, which solves that main issue I brought up earlier, where a lot of decentralized projects lack vision. So the council will be able to push this vision forward, do the checks and balances if it's not going well, and readjust. The next is voting vaults. So this is a really exciting area that a lot of people have been talking about recently, and that is a structure to assign voting power, custom voting power, to our to a particular use case. So what this is capital efficient voting. Like I said before, governance tokens are locked in contracts. They can't be used in a capital efficient manner. So some examples of this would be if you would create a voting vault for a compound, a maker, or an Aave position that allows you to borrow against your collateral, but also remain voting in the system. So it doesn't result in that capital loss, opportunity cost, and reduces kind of sell pressure on certain markets. One of the other cool ones is that voting vaults are not just for tokens or positions. They can be applied to digital identities as well. And lastly, the third key element is that flexible spending and optimistic grants model. So spending in general at treasuries has seen a lot of problems in the past, and what we really want to see is a more flexible model. So if it's a low spend, there's very low quorum, it's easy to push proposals through. There's going to be tiers of certain spending. So if it's a high spend, it will take a lot more governance pressure. If it's a low spend, it can be done just by an approval from the GSC. And lastly, the optimistic grants. So these will be pre-funded grants with a friendly claim process. So what that works is, as the grantees are working towards their goal, the funds will accumulate. And if they aren't essentially doing their product well, the GSC or governance as a whole can reclaim that or claw it back. And once the expiry time on that grant is there, the grantee can claim their rewards. So overall, what does this model mean for governance users? Well, I kind of see two different types of users for this governance model. There's obviously the governance participants and users of the everyday governance system. And what that comes with is capital efficiency. So they can participate in governance while doing whatever they want to do in DeFi, earn yields and whatnot. So It's also a very simple delegation flow. So much like Gitcoin's rollout, you can automatically delegate and essentially be hands-off if you want, or you can be a voter and try to accumulate votes to be a part of the GSC or just be a delegate in general. And the cool thing about this is that governance rewards are thought of in this way that if I delegate to, let's say, Sebastian in the front row here, I'll get 90% of the rewards, he could get 10, and it encourages him to go and get as many delegates as possible, incentivizing his visionary aspect of the protocol. So adding rewards in that aspect is going to be a really great experiment that we try. And lastly, I mean, if you're a governance user who hates governance, you can just delegate to the GSC and let them vote for you and watch passively, participate in the forums and whatnot. The second user we really see is for protocols and DAOs. So we want people to fork this project. It's open source. We want people to work with it, contribute to the code directly, or they can take it, build their own, experiment, anything is possible. The other area is that they can actually propose voting vaults for their protocol. So like I mentioned before, if you have a governance token in Compound and you want to vote with that, you can have the protocol propose that for them. So Aave, Compound, even LP positions. If you want to vote while being in an LP position, you can do that. And lastly, protocols can apply for grants to work with us or do one-off projects, much like individuals as well. So what are our next steps? Well, our audits are on the way. They have been very thorough, and a big shout out to Runtime Verification and ChainSafe for their exceptional work. We absolutely loved working with them and would recommend it any day. We want people to build with us. So our security roadmap's coming out with our audits, our bug bounty program, our open source code, and our documentation as well. So we want people to try and break things, read our code, fork it, everything. And for now, we're back to work. So from here, we're going to continue to build, work on our front ends, establish our governance processes, and also think about experiments we wanted to propose to the community to consider in the future. So as a final note, this governance system has a lot of great features that we want people to use in the ecosystem. And with that, I truly want everyone to reconsider what they think about governance and how they want to participate and push the system forward, because we've been stagnant for quite some time. So I truly think with Council, we're on the verge of something new, and we want to reinvigorate the experimentation and innovation in governance today. And I think that's how DeFi should be. So thank you guys. I did want to take some questions if I do have some time. Let me check. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Windra?
Different form of governance. What inspired you to have those different structure of governance? Is there some real case, or you just invented something completely new?
I mean, yeah, like I said before, I think that traditional corporate governance and a board of directors is partly inspired, part of the inspiration for the GSC. So, I mean, it's been battle tested for generations. It works today very well. So I think you can take some great parts from that, and then the good parts from decentralized governance, such as delegation, treasury spending, and simpler things there. But yeah, what really inspired the open source nature of it was Compound, Governor Alpha, Governor Bravo, with their upgradability. Our system in general is very modular, so you can build things on top of it, remove them, much like voting vaults. You could create a voting vault, it doesn't work, you can cancel it by governance. So the nature of the protocol, modular, flexible, is really what inspired everything. Any other questions? All right, well, that concludes it. Thank you.